Welcome to the Best Little Town Podcast, your go-to source for everything happening in the town of Bedford's local government. Whether it's new initiatives or important decisions shaping our town's future, you'll hear it right here. Brought to you by Grove Street FM and hosted by Town Manager Bart Warner. This podcast is dedicated to keeping our residents informed and engaged.
It is Wednesday, December 13th. My name is Bart Warner, Bedford Town Manager, and I want to welcome you to this episode of the Best Little Town Podcast, which is a production through Grove Street FM, sponsored by the town of Bedford, to keep citizens, customers, businesses, and heck, anybody who's just interested in what happens in Bedford, apprised of the goings-on, particularly at the town council level. Last night, December 12th, the town council had its regular meeting, the last one of the calendar year, and it was chock full of activity, which I will try to recap in a meaningful and informative way right now. We began with a couple of appearances before council, one from representatives of the Bedford Community Orchestra, who explained that they need some help finding a venue in which to perform. Now, as part of their presentation, Scott Walters mentioned the fact that Bedford is likely the smallest community in the United States that has its own community orchestra, which again is another testimony to the wonderful elements we have in town that maybe you're not aware of, and maybe you wouldn't expect to be here, but nonetheless are excellent things that we possess in a community of our size. We also heard from Bill Mosley, who spoke to council about the segment of South Street, which is located between Main Street and Washington. Those of you who are familiar with the downtown area know that that particular segment is one way, heading southward from Main Street to Washington. Mr. Mosley asked town council to give consideration to changing that to two-way traffic. My understanding is that was the case many years ago. I arrived in Bedford in 2000. It was before my time, but that is a request that Mr. Mosley made. He owns some buildings there. There are some businesses that are behind that request as well. And that is something that town council will take up separately and consider as part of their deliberations. There were several announcements last night, and I'll attempt to cover those point by point. We want to make people aware of the fact that there will be a warming shelter offered in the community this winter from December 23rd through March 20th, each Friday, Saturday, and Sunday night at 112 Center Street. There is an informational meeting tonight at 112 Center Street for anyone who is interested in assisting with that. On an administrative note, town offices will be closed on Tuesday, December 19th from 11 a.m. to 1 o'clock p.m. for our annual Employee Appreciation and Service Award event. Also, in conjunction with the holiday schedule published by the Commonwealth of Virginia, town offices will be closed beginning at noon on Friday, December 22nd, and for the duration of Christmas and New Year's Day, both of which fall on Mondays this year. Wreaths Across America will be hosting a ceremony at 11 o'clock a.m. this Saturday, December 16th at Greenwood Cemetery. This is an organization that honors deceased veterans nationwide by placing wreaths on their grave sites. The cost of the wreaths is covered by donations. There are approximately 1,400 veterans buried in all town cemeteries, and I'm very gratified to report that the cost of the wreaths for all of our local veterans who are buried here in Bedford have been fully funded. Dave McCormick has identified January 17th as a date to conduct tours of the Bedford Middle School project site for members of council per their request. We are seeing some more activity there, and in my personal conversations with Mr. McCormick, I'm advised that we'll see steady activity, hopefully on a regular basis, moving toward completion of that project. There will be further discussion of that project. Those of you who are keeping track know that Mr. McCormick received the property from the town as part of the redevelopment, but the performance agreement states that the work will be completed by March of 2024. We know that that's probably going to be a difficult deadline to meet, and we are currently talking to Mr. McCormick about the exact time frame and getting that much anticipated project complete. Also, last night was the last meeting for Bruce Hartwick and Darren Schoen in their official capacities as council members. They were both recognized by their colleagues, and Mayor Black gave special presentations to both. We had 4 public hearings last night. 3 of those were related to budget matters, which I'll talk about briefly, and another one was related to zoning text and zoning map amendments. No one spoke at any of those public hearings. We did receive written comments from 2 citizens related to the zoning matter, which will be included in the overall meeting minutes. Also last night, Town Council appointed a member to the Redevelopment and Housing Authority. That is one of several appointed bodies by council that provide services to the town. This one, as its name suggests, is focused on making sure that the housing stock in town is maintained at an adequate level. They have grant programs available to assist owners with that, and also to encourage redevelopment of existing buildings. Mr. David Foster expressed an interest in being appointed, and the vacancy had been appropriately advertised, and council voted unanimously to appoint Mr. Foster to serve on that authority immediately, with his term to expire in October of 2027. Moving into the new business section of the agenda, we had several items of what I will describe as housekeeping. And this will give me an opportunity to provide a little insight into the financial workings of the town. We are governed by a fiscal year that runs from July 1st to June 30th, which means our new year begins in July and our end of the year ends in June. That is a 12-month box in which all of our work plans and our financial reports are contained. Ideally, particularly with the budget, we set forth a work plan in which we get everything done within those 12 months. Of course, in real time, that's often not the case. And there are many activities that we have underway as of midnight on July 1st that haven't been completed. And so, in a reporting sense, we have to fit everything neatly in that 12-month box. But from an operational perspective, that doesn't often happen. So to account for that, we typically have what we describe as rollovers and reappropriation of funds. And that basically involves projects that are underway from that time from June 30th to July 1st each year. We had several of those projects. Most of those involve our electric operation, and I'll let you know a little bit about that. There are many challenges associated with getting the electricity to your home or business. A lot of that relates to maintenance of facilities and the equipment required to do so. In today's environment, we're finding there is a significant lead time for the materials that we need. So much so that in one case, we know we will need a bucket truck about 3 years from now. But we have to order that now in order to meet that time frame. Of course, that's in a future fiscal year, so that has to be accounted for. A lot of our ongoing projects we're finding are somewhat delayed by current supply chain issues, but we are committed to getting the work done and making sure we preserve the infrastructure for the services that our citizens and businesses rely upon. The other rollover activity relates to some grants that we have, and I'll speak to a few of those. A lot of those relate to federal and state grants such as ARPA, which was the American Rescue Plan Act. The town committed a lot of those funds to making improvements to the water and sewer system, which are currently ongoing. And again, on paper, those are intended to be completed within a specific 12-month period. but on the ground, in the ground, and out of the ground, we often find that the reality is they don't fit neatly there. So a lot of the rollovers there were related to that activity. There's also a grant for replacement of the bridge connecting McGee Street to Orange Street. That bridge, those of you who are familiar with it, spans the railroad tracks, and let's say it's rustic, to the point where at its inspection in 2019, it was identified as not being optimal for vehicular traffic. Fortunately, VDOT has a grant program that will fully fund replacement of that, and we are taking advantage of it. We just recently approved the design for that project, which will involve replacing basically a wood frame bridge that's approximately 1 lane wide with a modern 2-lane facility that I believe will also include sidewalks. The good news is that comes at no cost at all to the town. That's being done through the State of Good Repair grant program administered by the Virginia Department of Transportation. The bad news is, like a lot of other things with construction these days, it's taking a long time. We do anticipate that work will commence, and we hope to see significant progress, if not completion, by September of 2024. The other item of new business last night related to the building occupied by the Chamber of Commerce. There's been quite a bit of discussion about that property and the relationship between the Chamber and the town over the last few years. The background is that the Chamber building, located at 305 East Main Street, sits on property that is actually owned by the town of Bedford. Back in the 1970s, and I want to say approximately 1973, the leadership of the Chamber pooled their funds and constructed a building on the property. Given the nature of its location, that then sparked a long-term lease between what was then the city of Bedford and the Chamber of Commerce. That lease had continued since that time with various renewals. But the last time it came up for renewal, which was approximately 5 years ago, Council and the Chamber leadership entered into a discussion about the Chamber's desire to kind of clean up that arrangement, settle the ownership of both the building and the property once and for all. And through a series of conversations back and forth, the Chamber offered to purchase the property from the town for $30,000, financed over 2 years. Council agreed to that, and last night took the action to set that in motion. Basically, what Council approved last night was the scheduling of a public hearing for public comment on that and future action, and essentially to declare that property as surplus. The town owns a lot of properties in addition to its facilities that sometimes it revisits and finds that maybe it has no purpose for, but might be valuable to private concerns. In those cases, there are processes that the town has to go through, which are public and are required to occur within town council meetings. And that's kind of the background for this Chamber issue. I will say, from our perspective, the town's always enjoyed a great relationship with the Chamber of Commerce. And while that negotiation could have been complicated, I think the good relationship on both sides is moving that forward, and you'll hear more about that as we go along. The next administrative task that we took on last night relates to activity out in Bedford County being conducted by Shentel. If any of you listeners are county residents, you're aware that the Bedford County Broadband Authority is looking to extend high-speed internet infrastructure throughout the boundaries of the county. They've awarded contracts to various companies, one of which is Shentel. And the activity that Shentel is focusing on is kind of in the corridor of the county that goes from the town to Big Island. Coincidentally, the town's electric utility occupies most of that same space, and Shentel has advised us that they would like to use our space within where our lines are located to extend that service to county residents. If anyone's terribly interested in the legal ramifications of that, I can have Mike Lockaby explain those to you. But essentially, we have to grant permission to Shentel to do that. And council began that process last night by granting Shentel temporary easements to keep the county's broadband project moving so our neighbors in Big Island can enjoy the same level of internet service as everyone else in the county. The next item of business taken up by council was consideration of an employee holiday bonus. This was something that was included in the fiscal year 23-24 budget. Council doesn't do this every time, but they do want to make it clear that they appreciate the efforts of my colleagues who provide the services and who get the work done. And to express that, last night they approved a one-time bonus of $250 per employee, which we will distribute at next week's Employee Appreciation Banquet. The next item of business related to some proposed changes in our zoning and building ordinance fees. The town charges fees for activities such as new home construction or additions, and also for non-residential construction to cover the costs of inspections and zoning approval. Those fees were last touched by probably the city back in 2013. Since then, there's been some increased pressure on our staff and on our costs, and as a result, we have looked to increase some of the fees for some of the permits. We're not talking about a large dollar change, but the percentage is going up just a bit. For instance, for a new home residential permit, the town currently charges $40, but as of January 1st, the town will charge $50. For non-residential construction, projects up to 1,000 square feet currently cost $75 for a permit. That will go up to $100. And in presenting this to council, staff noted that the new fees are in line with those charged by Bedford County. So wherever we can provide some consistency in service and experience, we try to do that. Council did unanimously adopt those fee changes. A large topic of discussion last night related to revision of the town's zoning ordinance and zoning map. The zoning ordinance is a rather complicated document that attempts to steer development and land use in the direction identified by the town's comprehensive plan. Now, in that process, we also have to manage several concerns and interests, including those of private property owners who may have slightly different ideas relative to what the community comprehensive plan directs. The comprehensive plan is revisited on a regular basis. The state requires it to be updated every 5 years. I can tell you that the Planning Commission talks about that every year and considers changes. The zoning ordinance, on the other hand, has not been comprehensively rewritten since the late 1980s. And it's no stretch to say that the building development world is a lot different today than it was about 40 years ago. So back in 2019, Town Council identified rewriting of the zoning ordinance as a priority. We hired a consultant, EPR, out of Charlottesville to assist with that process. And the Planning Commission has been doing a lot of the grunt work beginning June 20th, 2020 on revising that. We've had a series of public meetings. We sent letters to every property owner of record as of July 1st, and that included the recently annexed territories. And again, the Planning Commission has invested quite a bit of time into making some changes, but even with all that time frame and all that work, most of the changes are not significant. In fact, a lot of the work has been done to reformat the ordinance and make it a little bit easier for the normal, regular citizen to understand. With that said, Council had a discussion of that process and determined that they would like to take a little bit more time. We have had some comments and concerns raised from some citizens, about the proposed changes, and we want to make sure that everybody has a chance to participate fully in that discussion. As a result, Town Council decided to basically put off action last night and to discuss the matter further at its regular meeting on January 9th, and to have a work session for that purpose at 5:30 p.m. That will actually be the next time that council gets together, And we would certainly invite you to join us on that occasion, either in person or to view the stream of the meeting, or after the fact to review the recordings. In fact, that goes back to the purpose of my conversation with you this morning, which is to make sure that everybody knows what's going on. On a kind of a random aside note, I guess I will offer an apology of sorts to anyone who wanted to tune in to last night's Liberty High School basketball game. Grove Street FM does a great job of providing access to community events, including sports. And on a personal note, I'm privileged to assist Brian Schley and Trent Warner in being part of the broadcast team for that. Unfortunately, last night, my day job conflicted with our ability to produce that broadcast. And also Woody Watts, who provides excellent community programming, is our de facto communications person with the town as well. So if you were looking to hear details of the first win by Coach John McSweeney at the head of the varsity boys Minutemen team, we do offer our apologies, but we will be back in the booth tonight to broadcast the girls' game against Northside. At this time, too, I'd like to point out, and not just because he's sitting there looking at me, the contributions that Woody Watts and Grove Street FM make to this community. We really appreciate having this resource within our community, to the point that the town has entered a formal contract with Grove Street. But also, again, kind of similar to the Bedford Community Orchestra example, we have a lot of big city amenities here in a small town. We appreciate those, and we don't take them for granted, even as the train goes by in the middle of this broadcast. And I'll end on that note with saying thank you once again for the opportunity to serve you. I love this community. The title of our podcast, Best Little Town, comes from the slogan, World's Best Little Town. And I often tell people, we think that's true. Sometimes that's a boast, sometimes it's an aspiration, but that's the standard we set for ourselves. And we hope that you will help us to continue to maintain that high level of service. Thank everyone for being here, for your contributions to our community. And on behalf of the town, its staff, and town council, I want to wish everyone a very safe, blessed, and happy holiday season.